Ladies and gentlemen, pause for a moment and reflect. Have you ever found yourself on the cusp of something significant? A fantastic opportunity, a necessary confrontation, a long-held dream only to feel an insidious pull backward? That quiet, often insidious whisper, what if I'm not good enough? What if I fail? What if they see the real me? That whisper, that undeniable hesitation, that feeling of shrinking back, that's the voice of weakness. And it's the very thing we need to eradicate from our lives. If we don't actively work to silence and overcome these weak feelings, they will relentlessly, systematically, and tragically kill every single dream you've ever nurtured, every aspiration you've ever dared to imagine. Let me be absolutely clear about something important right from the outset. I am not, in any way, suggesting that we should strive to become heartless, devoid of emotion, or indifferent to the human experience. Far from it, what I am asserting unequivocally is that weak feelings are insidious parasites. They latch onto your deepest self, doubts, drawing their sustenance from your vulnerabilities. They swell and grow monstrous with every flicker of your fear, whispering corrosive lies until they convince you to surrender, to lay down your arms, to abandon the field before the battle has even truly begun. They are masters of preemptive defeat. So, the critical question, the one that truly matters, is this: how do we effectively silence them? How do we disarm these internal saboteurs? Every single day, from the moment we wake, we step into a continuous conversation. But this conversation isn't always, or even primarily, with the external world around us. More often than not, it's a relentless, often subconscious dialogue we have with ourselves. It's that quiet, persistent, unyielding voice nestled in the deepest corners of our minds, always narrating, always commenting, always questioning. What if I'm not smart enough? What if I completely mess this up? What if my colleagues, my friends, my family, my audience, what if they finally see through me, see my imperfections, my vulnerabilities? This isn't a voice that shouts from the rooftops or announces its presence with a booming declaration. No, this voice is far more cunning, far more subtle. It whispers. It whispers in the hushed intensity of boardrooms just before a pivotal presentation. Its quiet murmur echoing the anxiety building within you. It whispers when you're staring at a blank page, whether it's a new chapter for a book, a crucial report, or even a simple email, leaving you wondering how to begin, paralyzed by the sheer emptiness. It whispers most powerfully when you're standing on the precipice of something entirely new, utterly unknown, something that demands a leap of faith into uncharted territory. And perhaps the most tragic, the most self-sabotaging part of this entire internal dynamic is that we believe it. We accept these whispers as irrefutable truths, not because they are inherently true, mind you, but because they are so skillfully disguised, masquerading as sound reason, as prudent caution, as logical self-preservation. This voice, this inner critic, doesn't emerge from nowhere, entirely unbidden. It has deep roots within our very biology. We are, by our fundamental design, biologically wired to be cautious, to protect ourselves from harm, to meticulously prepare for any perceived danger. Our ancient brains are still operating on instincts that were painstakingly developed thousands upon thousands of years ago, when the primary overriding goal was bare survival, not necessarily flourishing or achieving grand success. This means that the very same primal brain mechanisms that diligently kept our ancient ancestors safe from the gaping jaws of predators, from the elements, from tribal warfare, are now tirelessly working to keep us safe from discomfort, from the sting of failure, from the awkwardness of embarrassment, from anything that might disrupt our perceived safety zone. And in its well-intentioned but often misguided efforts, it invents these thoughts that sound deceptively like profound wisdom, but are, in their true essence, fear meticulously dressed up in a cloak of logic and reason. Scientific research consistently reveals that the average person cycles through an astounding 60,000 thoughts every single day. And here's the truly sobering statistic. Over 80% of those thoughts are predominantly negative. Think about what that truly means for a moment. That's nearly 48,000 chances every single day for us to engage in self-doubt, to second guess our capabilities, to shrink back from opportunity, to retreat into the shadows of our own anxieties. But here's the critical insight, the profound truth that most people unfortunately never fully grasp. Thoughts are not immutable truths. Feelings are not absolute commands. Just because a voice, a sensation, an urge, or a thought rises within your mind or body, it absolutely does not mean it is worthy of your implicit trust or immediate obedience. It doesn't mean it's a directive you must follow. Imagine, if you will, standing in front of a mirror. You're simply observing your reflection. Now, imagine that behind you, unseen but ever present, there's a persistent, relentless individual who is constantly, cruelly criticizing you. You're not smart enough, you're entirely inadequate, you will absolutely fail, don't even bother trying, just give up now. If this barrage of negativity were coming from another person, any sane individual would instantly recognize it for what it is: emotional abuse, psychological warfare. We would put up boundaries, we would defend ourselves, we would distance ourselves from such a toxic influence. Yet, because this relentless barrage of negativity, this constant stream of emotional abuse, originates from our own inner voice, from within the confines of our own minds, we often let it go completely unchecked. We grant it an unwarranted authority. We permit it to sit in the driver's seat of our lives, to steer our decisions, to dictate our potential. But here's the liberating truth: we don't have to. We possess the innate, profound power to choose. We can choose to acknowledge the presence of that voice, to hear its whispers, without for a single moment obeying its destructive commands. Consider for a moment the titans of human history, the greatest innovators, the most profoundly courageous leaders, the brilliant artists who redefined their fields, the audacious trailblazers who carved new paths where none existed. Do you honestly believe, deep down, that they were entirely fearless? That they woke up every morning completely devoid of doubt or apprehension? Of course not. They heard the same whispers, the same insidious inner voice. The profound, pivotal difference was this: they simply didn't believe it. They didn't, for a moment, hand over the reins of their destiny to that internal saboteur. They painstakingly learned the art of defiance. They cultivated the inner strength to say, with unwavering conviction, "I hear you, voice of fear and doubt, but you absolutely do not get to decide my path. You do not get to dictate my potential. You do not get to determine my future." This is the foundational principle of reclaiming your inner power. I vividly recall an encounter with a remarkable young woman, brimming with brilliant ideas, overflowing with passion, and driven by an undeniable desire to launch her very own business. Yet, despite all these incredible qualities, she was utterly paralyzed. She looked at me, her eyes clouded with anxiety, and confessed, "I just don't think I'm ready. I've honestly never done anything like this before. The thought of it overwhelms me." I responded with a simple, yet profoundly powerful question. Do you truly believe that anyone who has ever achieved something extraordinary, something truly groundbreaking, had actually done it before in the exact same way? The change in her eyes was immediate and palpable. A light flickered on, it clicked. In that moment, a fundamental truth resonated deep within her. Readiness is a cleverly constructed myth. It's a cunning lie, a deceptive illusion that our inner fear painstakingly weaves to keep us firmly anchored in our comfort zones, to prevent us from taking that terrifying but necessary leap of faith. You're not, in fact, supposed to feel perfectly ready. That feeling of absolute certainty and preparedness is often an indicator that you're not pushing your boundaries enough. Instead, you are supposed to feel scared, to feel that flutter of anxiety, that trembling in your hands, that knot in your stomach. That sensation, that profound discomfort, is often the clearest, most undeniable sign that you are on the precipice of attempting something truly worthwhile, something that holds genuine significance. True courage, the kind that reshapes destinies and moves mountains, rarely announces itself with a thunderous roar. Most of the time, the sound of genuine courage is far more subtle, far more intimate. It sounds like a quiet, resolute sentence whispered to yourself in the face of immense challenge. I'll try anyway. And believe me, that single, unassuming sentence is all it takes to initiate a profound, sweeping shift in everything. Because that, my friends, is the precise moment you consciously stop allowing yourself to be led, manipulated, and constrained by fear. Instead, you begin to be powerfully led by something infinitely bigger, something far more compelling. Your deepest purpose, your insatiable drive for growth, your unwavering vision for what could be. That's the electrifying moment you stop being a puppet, manipulated by the flimsy strings of weakness and start being a force of nature, propelled forward by an unstoppable surge of inner strength. Let me share another poignant example. I know a young man who embarked on a relentless job search, applying for over 200 positions. Over and over again, he was met with the soul-crushing word, no. Each rejection, he told me, felt like a devastating confirmation of his deepest fears. Each one just solidified what I already thought. He confessed, his voice heavy with despair, that I simply wasn't good enough, that I was inherently inadequate. But then, one day, something truly remarkable happened. He paused, he took a deep breath, and he courageously asked himself a profoundly transformative question. What if these rejections, rather than being a judgment on my worth, actually say more about the fit between me and those specific opportunities? That one powerful reframe, that simple yet radical shift in perspective ignited within him the courage he needed to keep going, to persist in the face of overwhelming odds. He eventually landed a position that didn't just give him a job. It changed his entire life trajectory. Not because the job magically bestowed worth upon him, but because he consciously and decisively stopped letting doubt be the unreliable, destructive compass guiding his life. You see, the voice inside our heads, that persistent inner critic, often communicates in harsh, uncompromising absolutes. You'll never succeed, you always mess things up, you're destined to fail. This isn't reasoned logic, it's pure emotional sabotage, meticulously dressed up in the convincing attire of rationality. And if we fail to challenge these self-limiting narratives, if we allow them to go unchecked, we inevitably end up living lives that are based not on our true potential, but on the insidious lies we've so readily told ourselves. We remain small. We settle for far less than we're truly capable of achieving, not because we lack inherent capability, but because we've been utterly convinced of our own inadequacy. The antidote to this pervasive weakness isn't silence. You simply cannot always silence that deeply ingrained, evolutionarily hardwired voice. But what you can do, with conscious effort and persistent practice, is speak louder. You can consciously choose to narrate a profoundly different story for yourself. Yes, I am scared, but that feeling of fear does not, for 1 second, mean I am not capable. Yes, I have failed, and it stings, but that failure does not, by any measure, define me as a failure. Yes, I feel doubt creeping in, but that doubt does not in any way dictate that I won't ultimately succeed. This isn't about embracing a naive, blind optimism that ignores reality. This is about mental leadership. It's about making a deliberate, conscious decision that you will be the author of your own compelling narrative, not the ancient, overprotective voice that was initially trained to keep you safe and comfortable, but definitely not satisfied or fulfilled. Every truly meaningful achievement in human history, every transformative act of change, every bold, audacious decision that has pushed humanity forward, has its genesis in someone choosing not to believe their fear. It starts with an individual just like you saying, with resolute conviction, "This voice of doubt and apprehension doesn't get to lead me down a path of regret." It's crucial to reiterate, this isn't about being utterly fearless. That's an impossible and unnecessary goal. It's about developing the wisdom and fortitude to recognize fear for precisely what it is: a signal, a nervous system alert, not a definitive stop sign. It's a notification, not a command. There's a beautiful, liberating truth here that empowers us all. You are not your thoughts. You are not your feelings. You are the conscious observer of those thoughts and feelings. You are the empowered chooser of your responses. This profound realization means that you can experience the sensation of weakness without being weak. You can feel the nagging grip of doubt without succumbing to its paralyzing influence. You can acknowledge the presence of that inner voice without ever handing it the microphone and letting it broadcast its negativity to your entire being. So, the next time that familiar voice whispers, the one that tells you you can't, you're not ready, you'll fail spectacularly, take a deep, grounding breath. Step back, create a little space between you and that thought, and then, with quiet but unyielding resolve, say, "I hear you, voice of fear, loud and clear, but I choose differently. I choose a different path. I choose action." Because power isn't merely the absence of weakness. True power is the profound, conscious decision to never, ever let weakness rule your actions, your choices, or your destiny. We don't need to utterly kill the voice, perhaps that's impossible. We just need to stop letting it lead us astray. That voice may always be present, a faint hum in the background, but so too is your boundless courage. So too is your unwavering clarity of purpose. And so too is your deep, unshakable conviction. And these, my friends, are infinitely better guides. Choose them every single time. Fear, as we've discussed, is a master illusionist. It thrives in the quiet, in the moments of hesitation that precede a crucial leap. It swells exponentially in the vast, often intimidating space between an intention and the actual action. The longer we allow ourselves to pause, to contemplate, to overthink, the more elaborate and terrifying the illusion becomes. What once appeared as a perfectly manageable task now looms before us like an insurmountable mountain. A straightforward conversation, once a simple exchange, suddenly feels like a terrifying confrontation, fraught with unimaginable peril. We unwittingly bestow immense power upon the very things we avoid, not because those things inherently grow in size or difficulty, but because we stop moving. Fear, in its essence, is like a shadow. It doesn't exist independently in the presence of bright light or vigorous motion. It grows, it elongates, it distorts reality in stillness, in stagnation. And the only truly effective way to diminish its intimidating size, to shrink it back into its rightful, inconsequential place, is to move directly toward it, to engage with it. I once had the privilege of working with someone whose fear was not subtle in the slightest. It was a visceral, all-consuming terror that shook them to their very bones. Their hands would tremble uncontrollably, their voice would crack with palpable anxiety, and every fiber of their being would scream for an immediate escape whenever they were asked to speak in public. This wasn't a fear they could casually hide behind a practiced smile or mask with effortless charm. It was raw, visible, and deeply unsettling, the kind of fear that would compel most people to retreat, to concoct elaborate excuses, to completely rearrange their lives just to avoid that specific trigger. But this individual, against all conventional wisdom and against the overwhelming urges of their own biology, made a profoundly different choice. They leaned into it. They didn't begin by imagining themselves standing confidently on a TED stage, delivering a flawless keynote to thousands. No, they started small. They began in hushed, intimate rooms, enduring uncomfortable silences, battling sweaty palms, and forcing out words with a voice that notoriously cracked. They wisely joined a local Toastmasters club, a safe haven where failure wasn't just tolerated. It was actively welcomed and celebrated as a crucial part of the learning process. They practiced diligently in front of mirrors, in front of patient friends, in front of anyone who would genuinely listen without judgment. They stumbled, they forgot their carefully rehearsed words, they froze mid sentence, their minds going blank. But through every single excruciating moment, they kept showing up, again and again and again. That, my friends, is the profound, almost magical power of consistent action. It doesn't guarantee immediate, resounding success. It certainly doesn't promise instantaneous applause or widespread recognition. But what it does guarantee with absolute certainty is momentum. And momentum, in its relentless forward thrust, is what systematically eradicates weakness. Not because it magically eliminates the presence of fear, but because, with every small step, every courageous attempt, it incrementally quiets that debilitating voice inside that relentlessly whispers, "You can't." With every brave repetition, that insidious voice grows noticeably softer. With every earnest attempt, it loses a tiny bit more of its once unquestioned credibility, until, eventually, one miraculous day, it becomes nothing more than faint background noise present, perhaps, but utterly powerless to stop you. The transformation I had the privilege of witnessing in that person wasn't merely about conquering public speaking. It was a fundamental, profound transformation of their very identity. They no longer perceived themselves as someone who was afraid of public speaking. Instead, they redefined themselves powerfully as someone who acted in spite of fear. And that shift in identity, that fundamental change in self perception, is absolutely everything. Because when we harbor the belief that we are inherently weak, we passively wait for strength to magically appear before we even consider acting. But when we internalize the profound knowledge that we are perfectly capable of acting while afraid, we immediately stop waiting. We stop procrastinating. We begin. So many of us spend our precious lives perpetually stuck in the preparation phase. We endlessly wait for an elusive surge of confidence to arrive, for absolute clarity to descend like a divine revelation, or for that mythical, perfect timing to present itself. But here's the uncomfortable truth: confidence doesn't precede the action, it is a direct reward for the action taken. It's a glorious byproduct of sustained effort, not a prerequisite for beginning. You don't need to be perfectly ready. You need only to be willing, willing to be seen, even if it means being vulnerable, willing to be wrong, to make mistakes, to stumble, willing to be deeply uncomfortable. That, precisely, is where courage not only lives but thrives. Weakness doesn't spontaneously disappear just because we think a few positive thoughts or recite optimistic affirmations in the mirror. It dissipates, it loses its grip. It evaporates because we actively do the very thing it passionately tells us not to do. If your fear screams, "Don't speak your mind," then speak. If it commands, "Don't even try that new venture," then try. If it relentlessly predicts, "You will fail spectacularly," then fail, learn from it, and rise again. That, my friends, is the precise mechanism by which the power dynamically shifts. That is how you reclaim undeniable authority over your own precious life. Not by passively waiting for the feeling of fear to miraculously pass, but by resolutely doing it anyway. It's remarkably easy to look at someone successful, someone who seems effortlessly poised and confident, and assume they were simply born that way, always radiating competence. We see their polished delivery, their seemingly effortless confidence, their innate grace and poise. And in doing so, we often tragically forget that they, too, once stood exactly where many of us stand now, feeling afraid, riddled with insecurity, profoundly unsure of their next move. But here's their secret: they moved. They took a single, terrifying step. And then, despite the discomfort, they took another. And each subsequent step, each courageous action, made the next one infinitesimally easier. Each action chipped away relentlessly at the edifice of fear, until what was once utterly paralyzing eventually became routine, almost second nature. Action is the fundamental antidote to almost every conceivable form of emotional paralysis. Depression, crippling anxiety, pervasive self doubt, none of these debilitating states can truly thrive in continuous movement. Because, when we consciously choose to act, we dramatically shift our identity from being mere victims of our emotions to becoming active architects of our own vibrant future. It doesn't mean we cease to feel fear. It means fear doesn't get to seize the steering wheel and drive our lives into stagnation. It means we are no longer passively waiting for the universe to bestow upon us some mythical permission to be bold, to be audacious, to be ourselves. Take a moment to deeply reflect on your own life. What is that one thing you've been persistently avoiding? That difficult, uncomfortable conversation you've been putting off for weeks? That ambitious project you keep delaying, finding endless excuses? That grand dream that feels perpetually too big, too far out of reach, too inherently risky? That's the moment that defines you, your relationships, your career. Acted on that IT today is the mastery of it? Not perfectly, not with absolute confidence, but simply courageously. What incredible new possibilities might unfurl themselves if you finally stopped allowing the faint, disempowering voice of weakness to write the narrative of your irreplaceable story? The most profound and meaningful moments of growth in our lives almost always originate in discomfort, because discomfort, in its very essence, serves as a powerful signal, indicating that we are pushing against the current boundaries of our perceived capacity. It's the sensation of a muscle stretching beyond its familiar limits, the expansion of our spirit into uncharted emotional and psychological territory. And yes, it absolutely hurts. It's often deeply uncomfortable, but it also, without fail, strengthens us exponentially, because each and every time you consciously choose action over avoidance, you powerfully reinforce a new, empowering belief deep within your being. I can handle this. I am capable of navigating this challenge. And that single, deeply held belief has the power to rewire everything about how you perceive yourself and the world. I have witnessed countless individuals undergo astonishing transformations, not because they merely read another self-help book or passively attended another inspiring seminar, but because they simply did the hard thing, once and then again and then again. Consistent action doesn't just alter your external circumstances, it fundamentally changes you. It transforms the way you perceive yourself, the way you carry yourself with quiet dignity and self-respect, and even the way others experience your presence. You stop walking with hesitant, uncertain steps and start walking with an undeniable sense of conviction, purpose, and inner power. Weakness desperately wants you to wait, to endlessly second, guess yourself, to meticulously rehearse every worst case scenario until you're paralyzed by imagined catastrophes. But strength, true strength, is forged exclusively in the doing. It doesn't announce itself with a boastful shout. Instead, it whispers with quiet determination, one more rep, one more call, one more try. It's not always glamorous. It's certainly not always celebrated with public accolades. But it is always, unequivocally, worth every single ounce of effort. The invitation before you is simple, yet profoundly challenging. Starve your weakness by consistently feeding your courage. Don't squander your precious energy on that debilitating voice that relentlessly tells you you're not enough. Instead, channel every ounce of that energy into the actions that powerfully prove, not only to the world but to yourself, that you absolutely are enough. Don't passively wait to magically become fearless. Choose to be brave with your fear, to carry it as a companion, not a master. Don't wait to feel strong. Act and strength will inevitably find you, emerging from the very process of your courageous efforts. If there's one singular, overarching message I hope you internalize and carry forward from this discussion, it's this: you are not defined by the mere presence of fear within you. You are defined utterly and completely by what you choose to do with that fear. Every single step forward you take while feeling afraid is a monumental stride toward becoming the magnificent person you were always truly meant to be. Every action you undertake, no matter how small, is a powerful vote for your future self, a decisive declaration of your potential. So vote boldly, vote often, and when in doubt, just move. Because action, purposeful movement, is the ultimate weapon that starves weakness. And it is precisely in that movement that true, authentic courage joyously comes alive. When life, in its unpredictable and often brutal way, relentlessly hits us with the crushing weight of pain, the dizzying confusion of uncertainty, or a tidal wave of overwhelming, debilitating emotions, our most primal, deeply ingrained instinct is almost always to escape. We live in a world that has been meticulously designed, with alarming precision, for avoidance. With just a casual swipe of a finger across a screen, a quick click of a button, or the effortless twist of a bottle cap, we can, in an instant, momentarily disappear from the profound discomfort, the raw, aching sensations we so desperately want to avoid feeling. The stark truth, the uncomfortable reality, is that numbing has become the pervasive default response in our modern society. It's what countless people automatically resort to when they are hurting deeply but feel utterly lost, unsure of any other way to cope. And disturbingly, the world around us often inadvertently, even explicitly, rewards this avoidance. You're praised, sometimes even glorified, for exhibiting what is misconstrued as resilience. When you manage to show up to work or social gatherings with a forced smile after experiencing crushing heartbreak, you're applauded for staying busy and keeping your schedule packed to the brim when, deep down, debilitating grief is quietly, relentlessly eating you alive from the inside out. You're admired for pushing through and maintaining a facade of normalcy when crippling anxiety has you firmly by the throat, making every breath a struggle. But let's be unflinchingly honest with ourselves. Most of what we so readily label as strength in these scenarios is, in reality, simply avoidance skillfully disguised. You see, pain, in its relentless persistence, does not simply vanish because we choose to ignore it. It doesn't miraculously fade into oblivion because we attempt to drown it in fleeting dopamine hits from endless social media scrolls, excessive comfort eating, or mind-numbing, meaningless entertainment. Pain is incredibly patient. It waits. It patiently, insidiously buries itself deeper and deeper within the hidden recesses of our being, only to reemerge later, often in vastly different, unrecognizable disguises. Unprovoked rage, profound emotional numbness, self sabotaging behaviors, debilitating burnout, and in severe cases, even chronic physical illnesses. It grows progressively louder, more insistent, more disruptive. The longer we desperately pretend it isn't there, the longer we consciously refuse to acknowledge its presence. And the more fervently we attempt to run from it, the more insidious control it gains over our lives. We delude ourselves into believing we are escaping, but in truth, we are surrendering not to the transformative process of healing, but to the suffocating confines of suppression. Numbing, in its very essence, heals absolutely nothing. All it does is painstakingly build impenetrable walls around our hearts and minds. It convinces us, with seductive logic, that if we can just stay distracted enough, for long enough, the internal storm, the emotional turmoil, will miraculously pass on its own. But here's the undeniable, poignant truth. Feelings that are buried alive do not, in fact, die. They merely grow deeper roots, intertwining themselves into the very fabric of our being. They profoundly affect the way we show up in our most intimate relationships. They distort how we perceive and value ourselves. They subtly, yet powerfully, influence every single decision we make. And over time, this persistent numbing hardens us, not in a way that cultivates genuine strength or resilience, but in a way that keeps us deeply disconnected from our authentic selves, from our core truth. True strength is not, and never has been, the absence of feeling. On the contrary, it is the courageous willingness to feel fully, to embrace the entire spectrum of human emotion, and yet, despite the discomfort, to still consciously choose growth. That, my friends, is the essence of true transformation. It demands that we sit with the raw ache of our pain instead of desperately trying to silence it. It asks us to look pain directly in the face with open curiosity and ask with unwavering intent, what are you here to teach me? What lesson do you hold for my growth? It's not easy. It never is. But the profound process of healing begins the very moment we cease our desperate running. It begins when we stop numbing and start truly listening, when we stop distracting ourselves and start genuinely processing, when we stop avoiding the discomfort and bravely start transforming it. Transformation, by its very nature, is a messy, chaotic, and often nonlinear path. It's journaling at 2 a.m., when your thoughts are a tumultuous storm in your mind and your heart feels impossibly heavy. It's breaking down mid-sentence while confiding in someone you deeply trust, because the crushing weight of pretending to be okay finally became too much to bear. It's sitting in profound silence, consciously breathing through the inner chaos, and in that quiet space, realizing, with a startling clarity, that even your darkest, most challenging moments carry invaluable wisdom. It is allowing yourself to fully feel the searing depth of rejection, and rather than letting it define you, using it as a mirror, not to see your perceived inadequacies, but to sharpen and refine your profound inherent worth. Pain, in its enigmatic wisdom, always carries a message. Every broken heart, if examined with an open mind, holds within it the precise blueprint for constructing stronger, healthier boundaries in future relationships. Every rejection, when thoughtfully examined and dissected, transforms from a blow to your ego into an invaluable roadmap guiding you toward greater mastery and resilience. Every profound loss, when truly honored and grieved, deepens your capacity for empathy, expands your ability for genuine connection, and enriches your understanding of life's fragile, exquisite beauty. We spend an inordinate amount of time and energy trying to erase our scars, to meticulously hide them, to desperately pretend we are utterly unmarked by life's trials. But our scars, my friends, are not blemishes to be concealed. They are indelible marks that eloquently tell our unique, powerful story. They are profound testaments that we not only survived, but that we thrived, that we grew beyond the pain. They are visible reminders of exactly where we have grown, where we have become stronger, wiser, and more compassionate. Do you truly want to kill weak feelings, as we discussed in the beginning? Then don't run from them. Don't shy away from their discomfort. Instead, courageously use them. Channel their raw energy. Allow them to move through you, to be processed and integrated, not to swirl endlessly around you, creating a vortex of unaddressed emotion. Let them be your profound teachers, guiding you to a deeper understanding of who you truly are in this moment, and, more importantly, who you aspire to become. Because when you summon the immense courage to stop numbing yourself, you bestow upon yourself a gift far greater, far more lasting than mere comfort. You give yourself the invaluable gift of clarity. You earn the profound opportunity to rewrite your own story, transforming yourself from a passive victim of circumstances into the powerful, intentional author of your own meaning and purpose. It's easy to get trapped in the comforting, yet deceptive belief that pain is simply something to get over, that once we've somehow moved past it, we'll magically be whole and unbroken again. But healing, in its truest sense, doesn't imply forgetting the pain. It means integrating it. It means recognizing with profound insight that the very parts of you that have hurt the most, that have been most deeply wounded, are also, paradoxically, the very parts that possess the greatest potential to become your unparalleled source of strength, your deepest wisdom, and your most compelling purpose. Transformation doesn't erase the pain, it elevates it, it transmutes it, it turns it into something incredibly useful, something powerful. You don't have to drown in your pain to grow from it. You just have to be willing to face it long enough, with open eyes and a brave heart, to truly understand its message. That, precisely, is how genuine transformation unfolds. That is how scars, those painful reminders of past wounds, evolve into profound strategies for future success. When you meticulously use the pain of heartbreak to learn how to choose people who genuinely choose you back, who reciprocate your love and respect, when you transform the sting of failure into the bedrock for building unwavering discipline that inevitably leads to mastery, when you consciously harness the profound depth of grief to deepen your gratitude for the precious, fleeting moments that truly matter in life. This journey is not about achieving some unattainable state of perfection. It's not about never, ever feeling weak again. It's about developing the wisdom and fortitude to know exactly what to do with that weakness when it inevitably arises. It's about choosing not to fear it, not to be consumed by shame because of it, but to view it as an inherent, indispensable, and even sacred part of the vast human experience, a necessary catalyst for profound growth. The more we succumb to numbing, the more we tragically disconnect from the vibrant, rich tapestry of what it truly means to be alive. And the more we consciously choose transformation, the more we begin to perceive pain not as a punitive punishment, but as an essential, vital part of our evolutionary journey. You were not put on this earth to live a numb, muted existence. You were meant to live fully, vividly, present, and utterly awake. And yes, embracing this means you will feel more intensely. You'll likely cry more often. You'll ache more deeply. But the profound reciprocity is that you'll also love more passionately, laugh more authentically, create more boldly, and connect more deeply with others. Why? Because you will no longer be hiding from the fullness of life. You will be actively, courageously, and fully participating in it. So, the next time pain makes its unwelcome appearance, resist that primal urge to bury it deep within. Instead, consciously sit with it, write about it, talk through it with someone you trust implicitly. Breathe deeply into the discomfort, use it, let it shape you meticulously, deliberately, not shatter you into fragments. Let it fuel your inner fire, not smother your indomitable spirit. Because the ultimate goal isn't to somehow avoid ever being hurt. The ultimate transformative goal is to grow so incredibly strong, so profoundly self aware, so deeply aligned with your core values that no external pain, no matter how intense, can ever truly take away your fundamental inner peace. You don't need to desperately escape your feelings. You need to bravely understand them. You don't need to silence the powerful story of your life. You need to courageously own every chapter of it. You don't need to be less emotional. You need to be more intentional with your emotions. Pain, in this transformative context, is not the definitive end. It is, in fact, the courageous beginning, not something to be suppressed and hidden, but something to be fundamentally transformed. That, precisely, is where your true power resides, not in pretending, not in striving for an unattainable perfection, but in the messy, honest, brave, and ultimately rewarding process of turning everything that ever tried to break you into something that profoundly, powerfully, and irrevocably builds you into the person you are meant to be. That's how you truly kill weak feelings, not with denial, not with fleeting distraction, but with transformation, with the unwavering courage to feel, the profound wisdom to process, and the indomitable strength to rise again and again and again. Imagine this for a moment. Every single thought that flits through your mind, every deeply held belief you carry, every single moment you experience either exhilarating courage or paralyzing fear, all of it is meticulously shaped, subtly influenced, and profoundly determined by what you consciously, and often unconsciously, allow into your inner world. Every casual scroll through a social media feed, every word you read, every conversation you engage in, every piece of news you consume. Your inputs are never, ever neutral. They are, in essence, seeds. And what organically grows from those seeds, whether you are consciously aware of it or not, ultimately becomes the intricate landscape of your entire life. We often like to believe that we are fiercely independent beings, the sole architects of our own mindsets, completely immune to external influences. But the humbling truth is, the vast majority of what we feel, what we believe, what defines our emotional state, isn't born from some pristine, internal wellspring. It is, instead, absorbed. It is inherited. It is carefully handed down to us from the specific environments we inhabit, the voices we choose to listen to, the people we habitually follow, and the deeply ingrained stories we repeatedly tell ourselves about who we are and how the world works. Weak feelings like pervasive self, doubt, soul, crushing comparison, and crippling insecurity are not fundamentally flaws of your inherent character or moral failings. More often than not, they are symptomatic of poor exposure. It's akin to living in a heavily polluted city and constantly breathing in toxic air, then wondering why you feel chronically unwell, why your lungs are burning, why your energy is perpetually drained. We inadvertently consume emotional and mental toxicity, and then question the resulting sickness within us. Consider your social media consumption. If your feeds are relentlessly filled with meticulously curated perfection, where every face is flawlessly filtered, every body is sculpted to impossible ideals, and every life is flawlessly staged for public consumption, then your brain, without your conscious permission, begins to play a dangerous and destructive game. It begins to compare. It begins to measure your messy reality against an unattainable digital fantasy. It relentlessly whispers that you are intrinsically behind, that you are simply not doing enough, that your life isn't where it should be, that you are, in some fundamental way, utterly failing. And without you even consciously noticing it, you begin to shrink. You begin to doubt your own inherent worth, not because there is anything fundamentally wrong with you, but because you have been consistently fed a pervasive, poisonous illusion that distorts your reality, and it's not just the media we consume. Take a critical, honest look around at your closest circle, your immediate community. If the people closest to you are constantly, habitually complaining, if they perpetually find reasons why things absolutely won't work, if their words consistently tear down rather than lovingly build up, then you will, inevitably, begin to echo that corrosive energy. It's an undeniable truth because energy is profoundly contagious. Attitudes spread like wildfire. If you allow yourself to be surrounded by pervasive cynicism for an extended period, then hope, in its purest form, will gradually begin to feel naive, foolish, even utterly unrealistic. If you habitually spend time with people who readily quit the moment things become challenging, then perseverance, that vital quality of enduring effort, will start to feel unnecessary, even pointless. This is precisely why guarding your input is not a trivial tip. It is a fundamental principle of survival. This isn't about being overly dramatic or hypersensitive. It's about being incredibly deliberate, supremely intentional. Because your mental and emotional well-being, your clarity of thought, your inner strength, and your potential for profound growth all depend, with undeniable certainty, on what you consistently feed them, and if you fail to choose your input with conscious intention, the noisy, often chaotic, world will choose it for you. And the world, sadly, does not inherently care about your peace of mind. It profits immensely from your fears. It thrives on capturing and maintaining your undivided attention, regardless of the cost to your inner equilibrium. Therefore, you must become fiercely defensive of your inner sanctity, ruthlessly discerning about what you allow into your precious mental space. I once sat down with a grizzled, battle-hardened Navy SEAL who shared a profound piece of wisdom that has resonated with me ever since. He said, with quiet intensity, "You don't rise to the level of your goals. You fall to the level of your training." That simple, yet immensely powerful statement struck me deeply, because it encapsulates a fundamental truth about life under pressure. When adversity strikes, when unexpected challenges arise, when the immense weight of the world descends upon you, we don't magically become better, more resilient versions of ourselves. Instead, we instinctively default to our ingrained preparation. We revert, almost unconsciously, to the habits we've painstakingly built over time. And habits, as we know, are meticulously formed by repetition, by consistent exposure, by the very things we consume, internalize, and experience day in and day out. Your inputs, then, are your daily training. So the critical question becomes, what exactly are you training for? Who are you, piece by piece, becoming through the content you consistently consume, through the specific individuals you choose to spend your invaluable time with, through the recurring thoughts you permit to endlessly replay within your mind? If you consistently listen to the voice of fear every single day, you will, without fail, become increasingly anxious, agitated, and paralyzed. If you constantly expose yourself to chaos and negativity, you will inevitably feel unsafe, vulnerable, and overwhelmed. If you habitually engage in conversations with quitters, with those who readily abandon their efforts. You will begin to doubt the very point of trying anything meaningful. But conversely, if you intentionally feed yourself with strength, with empowering ideas, if you courageously surround yourself with truth tellers, with genuine encouragers, with those who speak visions of possibility and potential, rather than simply issuing definitive, limiting verdicts, then you will rise differently. You will show up stronger, more resilient, more grounded. You will respond thoughtfully to life's challenges rather than merely reacting impulsively, because your inner life, your very being, is being built upon something undeniably solid, something unshakable. Guarding your input isn't about superficially cutting people off or retreating entirely from the complexities of the world. It's about consciously and deliberately choosing your soil. Because even the most vibrant, promising seed will utterly fail to grow, will wither and die if it is planted in poisoned, infertile ground. You can possess boundless ambition, a burning drive, and a crystal clear vision for your future. But if that vision is constantly being watered and nourished by a relentless stream of negativity, comparison, and doubt, it will inevitably shrivel and perish. And the most tragic part of this entire scenario is that when it does, you will likely blame yourself. You'll unjustly attribute its demise to your own lack of discipline, your own perceived weakness of willpower. But in reality, it was never just about you alone. It was profoundly about what you were consciously or unconsciously breathing in, absorbing, and internalizing every single day. That, my friends, is why we must courageously embrace the role of intentional curators of our own minds. If something you consume, a show, an account, a type of news, consistently drains your precious energy every single time you engage with it, then mute it. Unfollow it, turn it off. If a particular person makes you feel inherently smaller, diminished, or unworthy every single time you are in their presence, then deliberately create more space between you. Limit your exposure. If your daily habits leave you feeling perpetually guilty, ashamed, or defeated, then take definitive steps to rewire them, to replace them with empowering alternatives, because no one else, absolutely no one, is going to protect your peace for you. You, and you alone, must take unequivocal ownership of it. This isn't about engaging in some naive form of toxic positivity, pretending that everything in the world is perfect and wonderful. It's about meticulously filtering for truth. Genuine strength doesn't emanate from fleeting hype or superficial optimism. It emerges from profound clarity, from seeing things precisely as they are, acknowledging the challenges, and yet still choosing, with unwavering resolve, to move forward. So, when you consciously choose better inputs, you are not escaping reality. You are, in fact, equipping yourself, strengthening your resolve, and preparing yourself more robustly for it. You are actively training your mind to be resilient, to be deeply grounded, to be ready for the moments that truly matter, for the challenges that will inevitably arise. It is not just permissible, but fundamentally necessary to audit your influences regularly. Not every voice, not every person, truly deserves a permanent seat at the table of your mind. Not every narrative gets to shape the powerful story of your life. Some people, some sources, are nothing more than echoes of fear, amplifying your anxieties. Others are clear, guiding signals of boundless possibility and untapped potential. Learn the profound difference. Your future, the quality of your entire existence, literally depends on this discernment. Every single day, relentlessly, you are being shaped, molded, transformed. And every single day, you possess an immense, undeniable say in who you are actively becoming. You may not always get to choose the external circumstances that befall you, but you always, unequivocally, get to choose what you carry within you. what you choose to believe about yourself and the world, and what you consciously allow to stick and take root in your inner landscape. So, don't just passively protect your input, actively, aggressively upgrade it. Feed your nascent strength with richer, more meaningful conversations, with profound, insightful books, with deeper, more authentic relationships. Choose content that genuinely stretches your mind, challenges your perspectives, and stimulates your growth, not merely that which momentarily entertains you. Seek out individuals who genuinely challenge you to be a better, more evolved version of yourself, not merely those who keep you comfortable and complacent. When you consciously begin to implement these deliberate choices, something truly transformative shifts within you. You start walking taller with a newfound sense of self-assurance. You start thinking clearer, with sharper focus and greater insight. You start leading stronger, with more conviction and impact. Not because you're suddenly pretending to be utterly fearless, but because you are consistently, deliberately feeding your courage, nurturing its growth day by day. It all begins with one single, powerful choice. What will I allow into my sacred inner world today? And that choice, diligently repeated every single day, becomes your undeniable advantage. It becomes your sharpest edge. It becomes the catalyst for your profound, lasting transformation. So, yes, guard your input as if your very life depends on it, because, in every meaningful sense, it absolutely does. We're all intimately familiar with that agonizingly tight knot that forms deep in the pit of our stomach when we experience failure. That cold, hollow, sinking sensation that whispers with a chilling resonance, maybe you're just not good enough. Perhaps this entire endeavor was a grave mistake. You should have known better. This feeling isn't always loud or overtly dramatic, but it is remarkably persistent, an insidious, low-frequency hum of self-doubt. And if we allow it, if we succumb to its insidious power, it begins to define us, to shape our perception of ourselves and our capabilities. One of the sneakiest, most profoundly corrosive weak feelings we frequently experience is shame. Specifically, the deep, often unspoken shame we tragically attach to the experience of failure. It doesn't burst into our consciousness with a bold, attention-grabbing sign. Instead, it creeps in quietly, subtly, often in the immediate aftermath of a failed business pitch, a crushing job application rejection, a deeply meaningful relationship that tragically didn't work out as planned, or a golden opportunity that was inexplicably missed. It doesn't announce its arrival with a fanfare. It just silently sidles up to you and whispers, with a cruel, knowing tone, maybe you were never truly cut out for this in the first place. You're inherently inadequate. But that, my friends, is precisely the voice we must fiercely challenge, not meekly obey. Failure is not a definition. It is not an indelible label we are condemned to wear as a permanent badge of inadequacy. It is, purely and simply, feedback. It is invaluable data. It is information, gleaned from direct experience, that provides us with a clear, actionable map forward. It is not a definitive stop sign ordering us to cease all progress. Rather, it is a crucial signal. A signal that clearly states, that specific approach didn't yield the desired outcome. Therefore, it's time to try something different. Adjust your strategy. Yet, so many of us, largely because of the way we were raised, the lessons we were taught, or the societal conditioning we absorbed, profoundly confuse the event of failure with our fundamental identity. I failed at that task tragically morphs into I am a failure. And that one small, seemingly innocuous shift in language, from describing an action to defining one's entire being, is the monumental difference between giving up entirely and courageously continuing, between abandoning our dreams and profoundly growing into our fullest potential. Let me share a story that beautifully illustrates this concept, not of a titan in a perfectly tailored suit, but of a woman who started with just $5,000 industry contacts and an audacious idea that absolutely no one initially believed in. Her name is Sarah Blakely, the visionary founder of Spanx. When Sarah was growing up, her insightful father had a unique and transformative ritual. He would gather Sarah and her brother at the dinner table each evening and ask them a single thought-provoking question. What did you fail at today? That's right, fail. Not what they succeeded at, not what triumphant achievements they accomplished, but specifically, what they failed at. And here's the truly astonishing twist. If they had nothing to say, if they couldn't articulate a single failure, he would express profound disappointment. Why? Because to him, a lack of failures meant they weren't trying anything genuinely new. They weren't stretching themselves beyond their comfort zones. They weren't taking enough calculated risks. That one daily question fundamentally rewired Sarah's perception of the entire world. Failure, in her mind, wasn't something to dread or meticulously avoid. It was something to actively seek out. It was a tangible indicator of effort, of courageous movement, of daring to try. It wasn't shameful, on the contrary, it was admirable. And that profound, simple shift in perspective stuck with her, shaping her entrepreneurial journey. It was that very mindset that enabled her to build a multi-billion-dollar company, starting with an idea that many people openly mocked, casually dismissed, and severely underestimated. She faced relentless rejection, male investors laughed her out of rooms, department stores repeatedly said no. But she didn't curl up in defeat. She didn't fold under pressure. Instead, she brilliantly used those rejections as redirections, pivoting her strategy, refining her approach. That's precisely what can happen, when you courageously redefine failure. And we desperately need to do the same. Because the people who achieve extraordinary things in life, the ones we admire, whose words we quote, and whose achievements we look up to, are not immune to weak feelings. They experience the same doubts, fears, and disappointments. The difference lies in this. They've simply built the mental and emotional muscles to recover faster. They've painstakingly trained themselves to view failure not as a damning mirror reflecting their inadequacy, but as an invaluable compass guiding their next steps. They do not allow failure to define who they are at their core. Instead, they strategically use it to decide where they need to go next, what adjustments they need to make. Think deeply about the last time you experienced a setback, a significant failure. Really reflect on it. What was your internal narrative? What did you say to yourself in those quiet moments of disappointment? Did you say, "This was a mistake, but I'm incredibly proud that I even tried. I learned something valuable"? Or did you immediately spiral into self-recrimination, muttering, "Of course, this happened to me. I should have known better. I'm just not capable"? That inner narrative, that persistent internal dialogue, is absolutely everything. It doesn't just passively reflect how we feel in the moment. It profoundly shapes what we choose to do next, what actions we take or don't take. A person who genuinely believes failure is nothing more than valuable data will try again, perhaps with a modified approach. A person who mistakenly believes failure is an unchangeable identity will retreat, give up, and succumb to stagnation. And so, the pivotal question returns: which voice are you truly listening to? There's an even deeper, more insidious reason why failure often feels like a direct assault on our very identity. It's because, somewhere along our mental journey, we mistakenly began to link our performance with our inherent worth. our achievements with our intrinsic value as human beings. But these are profoundly dangerous links, because the moment you stumble, the moment you fail, those fragile links snap. And in that moment of broken connection, we begin to tragically think, I am not valuable because I didn't win. I am worthless because I lost. This is a catastrophic falsehood. You are not your wins, you are not your losses. You are, in your most authentic essence, the unwavering courage to simply show up. You are the enduring heart to try again, even after being knocked down. You are the profound willingness to look at a situation and say, with resilience, that didn't go as planned, and it hurts, but I am still here. I am still capable. I am still moving forward. I recall working with a highly capable leader who had just been passed up for a major promotion he desperately wanted. He was utterly devastated for weeks, consumed by self-blame. He kept repeating, I blew it completely. They clearly don't believe in me at all. When I gently pressed him for the feedback he received, he reluctantly shared. They said I need to work on my emotional regulation. My response was immediate and clear. That's not a judgment on your character or your worth. That is purely and simply data. That is something tangible you can absolutely work on. It's a skill, not a fixed trait. And he took that feedback to heart. He immersed himself in developing that skill. Within a year, he not only secured that promotion, but he evolved into the calm, decisive person others instinctively turn to in moments of crisis. Why? Because he courageously refused to let the initial no become a final, unshakable truth about his potential. He ingeniously turned it into a powerful tool for self-improvement and future success. We desperately need to normalize failure, not as a rare, embarrassing detour on the path to success, but as an absolutely indispensable, integral part of the main road itself, part of the fundamental process of growth. If you are never failing, then, by definition, you are not risking enough. And if you are not risking, you are most certainly not growing. Growth is, by its very nature, never comfortable. It never arrives neatly wrapped in a bow of perfection. It is messy, it is clumsy, it is full of scrapes, bruises, and persistent second-guessing. But that, paradoxically, is precisely what makes it real. That's what makes it profoundly valuable. Children instinctively understand this truth. Observe a toddler meticulously learning to walk. They fall far more times than they manage to stand upright. But they don't quit. They don't throw up their tiny hands in despair and declare, perhaps walking just isn't for me. I'm clearly not cut out for this. No, they try again and again and again with unyielding determination. Until one glorious day, they take those first wobbly steps, and we, as their proud onlookers, clap and cheer and even shed tears of joy. But somewhere along the way, in our journey to adulthood, we tragically stopped cheering for the falls. We started labeling them as failures. And that profound shift in our collective mindset, more than almost anything else, has systematically silenced our innate, courageous ability to try new things, to take risks, to explore uncharted territory. So, here's a different, more empowering question to begin asking yourself each and every day. What did I learn today that I couldn't possibly have learned without trying, without daring to fail? That, my friends, is where the immense power lies. It lies in consciously reframing your setbacks as invaluable stepping stones, in viewing your missteps not as marks of inadequacy, but as clear, undeniable markers of forward motion. It lies in remembering that the individuals you admire most, the groundbreaking innovators, the brilliant creators, the transformative leaders, they didn't achieve their extraordinary positions by meticulously avoiding failure. They got there, unequivocally, by failing forward. If shame is the insidious voice that whispers, you should have known better. Then courage is the unwavering voice that boldly replies, now I do know better, and I'm stronger for it. If fear paralyzes you with the thought, you're not cut out for this grand endeavor, then the spirit of growth, resilient and defiant, says, watch me. Watch me build the exact skills required. And if failure, in its quiet, deceptive way, whispers, you are not enough, then the roar of your inherent resilience thunders back, I am just getting started. This is merely the beginning of my true story. This is not about being reckless or careless. It's about being relentlessly, courageously relentless. It's about making a conscious choice to view your life's journey not through the harsh, unforgiving lens of unattainable perfection, but through the compassionate, empowering lens of continuous progress. You are going to fall. That is an absolute guarantee in life. But what you choose to do next, in the moments immediately following that fall, that, and that alone, is what will truly define the trajectory and meaning of your entire life. So, the next time you experience a setback, the next time you fail, do not hide it, do not run from the discomfort, do not pretend it never happened, attempting to erase it from your memory. Instead, sit with it, engage with it. Ask it pointed questions. What did I learn from this experience? What crucial insights does this tell me about what I need to adjust, to refine, to improve? Where, from this very point, can I courageously go next? Failure itself is not the enemy. Shame is. And the most powerful, most effective way to utterly defeat shame is with the unvarnished, liberating truth. The truth that failure is, in fact, incredibly valuable feedback. The truth that falling down is not the opposite of success. It is an undeniable, indispensable part of the very process of achieving it. And the most powerful, most triumphant thing you can possibly do after a fall is to rise again smarter, stronger, and infinitely wiser than you were before. Because in the grand tapestry of life, you don't ultimately become truly great by never failing. You become great, undeniably great, by simply never stopping. There comes a profound and often uncomfortable moment in every person's life when the pervasive fog of uncertainty must inevitably lift. A critical juncture arrives when you suddenly realize, with a stark and undeniable clarity, that merely drifting through life, constantly unsure of who you truly are, what your core values are, and what you unequivocally stand for, is no longer an acceptable mode of existence. This isn't because the external world has miraculously become clearer or simpler. Quite the opposite. It's because the immense, accumulating weight of not knowing yourself, of remaining perpetually undefined, has finally become far too heavy, far too burdensome to carry for another moment. Weakness, fear, and shame, these debilitating emotions, do not thrive in environments of clarity, self-awareness, or resolute certainty. On the contrary, they flourish and grow exponentially in the fertile ground of confusion. And the greatest, most pervasive confusion, the one that undermines us most deeply, is not about what specific actions we should take in a given situation, but about the fundamental question of who we truly are. If you fail to consciously and deliberately define yourself, if you leave that profound existential void open, the world, with its relentless pressures and myriad expectations, will, without hesitation, decide for you. And let's be unequivocally honest. The world, in its often harsh and indifferent nature, is rarely kind in its definitions. It will, almost certainly, define you by your lowest moment, by your most spectacular failure, by your biggest, most regrettable mistake. It will relentlessly label you by what it perceives you to lack, rather than celebrating the immense potential and capabilities you inherently possess. It will scream labels at you: lazy, unworthy, too late to start, not enough, a complete failure, And when you internalize these external definitions, you begin to live a life that is not authentically yours.